When I'm asked about evidence for God, one of the first places I like to take people is to the very beginning. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, why is that especially a big deal today? People have been, obviously aware of this passage of scripture for thousands of years. It's a big deal today because for over 100 years, leading scientists, astronomers, physicists believed that there was no beginning, that the universe basically was eternal, and that the universe was infinite. Now, this is obviously a very big deal. And you kind of have to take a look at how we know that the universe had a beginning. And the way we know is back in the 1920s, we had a gentleman named Edwin Hubble who actually made measurements of galaxies moving away from each other and the universe expanding. And so this was a big deal, but this didn't convince scientists that there was yet a beginning. That didn't happen until the 1960s when Penzias and Wilson, two scientists at Bell Labs in New Jersey, discovered the background radiation to the Big Bang. So again, this is a very big deal. So for over 100 years, most of the leading scientists in America, about 2/3 of the physicists and astronomers, up until 1950, believed that the universe was eternal, infinite, and had no beginning. So everything changed. Everything changed really dramatically. And now leading scientists have kind of finally caught up to the idea of Genesis 1:1. There was a beginning. So you see scientists like Stephen Hawking, Lawrence Krauss, Peter Atkins, the list goes on and on and on, that are now coming to grips with the fact that yes, the universe had a beginning. Even Steven Weinberg agreed with it. And many of them are coming to the conclusion that not only the universe had a beginning, but the universe had a beginning from nothing. Now, how do you explain a universe that had a beginning from nothing? And really, there's only three possible simple explanations. Either it came into being based upon some necessity, it came into being based upon an accident, or it came into being based upon a decision. So there's a number of people who subscribe to each of these views, and let me just read a couple of things that each of them had to say. So Stephen Hawking, for example, in his book, The Grand Design, basically conveyed the idea that the universe had a beginning from nothing by necessity based upon a law like gravity. So his conclusion was basically spontaneous generation from nothing. And this is what he had to say. Because there's a law like gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. Spontaneous creation is the reason there is something rather than nothing. Wow, that's a pretty interesting theory. Spontaneous creation from nothing by necessity. But it really doesn't make a lot of sense, because if there was nothing to create a necessity. So there would have been no laws, there would have been no energy, there would have been no matter, there would be absolutely nothing. You can't have a necessity from nothing. And it surely makes, total nonsense to conclude that the university created itself spontaneously because of some non-existent necessity. So let's go to another idea. Another idea is that the universe created itself somehow from accident. And this is Peter Atkins, chemist at University of Oxford. He's retired now, but this is what he had to say. At the creation, nothing did indeed come from nothing. But the original nothing was turned into a much more interesting and potent nothing, current nothing, when some kind of event split nothing into electrical opposites. So some kind of event. So there was nothing. Nothing, he says, rolled into a different kind of nothing that had potentialities, and it somehow split itself into electrical charges. So here's the idea that some sort of accident caused nothing to turn itself into something. Again, it doesn't really make a great deal of logical sense. So you have a third alternative. The third alternative is a decision. And that's what the Bible basically has said all along. God created the heavens and the earth. He didn't have to. He wanted to. The universe doesn't exist because it needed to or because of some accident creating it. And when you think about it, not only did matter and energy come into existence when the universe did, everything came into existence. Matter, energy, space, time, laws. So the idea that something accidentally caused it to happen is kind of interesting. I think it's a much more logical conclusion to think that it's a decision. And this is what Gerald Schroeder, MIT educated physicist, had to say. And he used to believe that the universe didn't need God as an explanation for existence. But this is what he says now. The physical system we refer to as our universe is not closed to the non-physical. It cannot be closed. Its total beginning required a non-physical act. Call it the Big Bang. Call it creation. Let the creating force be a potential field if the idea of God is bothersome to you. But realize the fact that the physical gave rise, that the non-physical gave rise to the physical. This is what the Bible basically has said all along. It said God created the universe. God created everything. It says that God created the universe from nothing. It also says that God stretched out the heavens. So here you have Penzias and Wilson. Here you have Edward Hubble, all reaching the same conclusion that Genesis 1:1 has said all along. And this is what the prophet Isaiah had to say about 2,500 years ago, a little bit over that. And this is God talking. It says, I am the Lord who's made all things, who alone stretched out the heavens, who spread out the earth by myself. So what makes more sense? Did the universe come into being from nothing, by accident, by necessity, or it was a decision? I think it's more logical to conclude that energy, time, matter, laws, space, all came into existence because of a purposeful decision.